The first step to writing old characters, especially as a younger author, is to remember that being old is never an actual human being's actual personality. Plenty of old characters that I've read, especially old characters written by younger and especially by newer, more rookie authors, seem to fall into certain stereotypes of old people. The very kind old lady, the very grumpy and sour old man, and or even flipping the way people perceive old people to be on its head and making the baller old person who just kind of acts like a young person, which has been done so many times that I really don't think it's that interesting or unique at this point. And the other two, for example, grumpy old man, nice old woman. On the one hand, I kind of get it, because those are ways that old people in real life actually often are. But if it's just grumpy old man, if it's just nice old lady, that's really not going to work very well. The grumpy old man instantly becomes so much more of a real human being when you show what made them what makes him such a grumpy person. Why doesn't he like people? Most people, I don't just, they get old, they're like, I'm old now. People, they're not as old as I am. That doesn't usually happen without some outside thing. When people get grumpier as they age, and they start to hate people, it's because they dealt with so many annoying people that now they just want to be on their own. Or the nice old lady was probably nice her whole life, to be honest, but maybe she mellowed out as she aged, People become much more human when you show how they change as they age, instead of just showing how they are when they're old. And the more you can take them out of one of the myriad old people boxes, the better. The second tip for writing old people is to remember that different old people will be more or less reticent to act as a mentor for your younger characters. Old characters in stories, especially fantasies, very often serve as mentor figures for the young characters. They're showing the ways of the world and whatnot. And often, a lot of old people really will want to give guidance to young people. Although, this needs to match their personality and how they grew as they aged, who they were before they aged, which, sets them on the path that leads them to who they are as an old person. If the guy's a grumpy old man, there's always a grumpy old man who was like, stupid rookie, fine, I guess I'll train you up. And after the story happens, and it gets better, blah, 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 and they say the world, he's like, not bad, kid. And then he goes and he smokes his pipe and he sits and is grumpy in the corner. And that's all nice, and it's so funny, and he has so much personality. But usually, this 2D grumpy mentor isn't going to want to be a mentor at all. Now, some old people are downright officious, and they will just smother you in advice. Although, nobody just lives also as an advice robot. So, essentially, the goal is to give your old person a good reason for acting as a mentor and giving advice to the younger person. And also a good reason for giving specifically the advice that they give, which is going to be informed by what they've experienced throughout their lives. Now, the third tip is to decide whether or not they are a self-pitying old person who does not like that they're old and wants to avoid the fact that they're old, does not want to hear that they're old, does not want to admit that they're old, or if they have aged gracefully, accepted that they're old, made the best of things. Plenty of people in real life, it's kind of silly when you think about it, tons of old people dye their hair to make themselves look younger. put on lots of makeup to cover up their wrinkles and essentially pretend that they're not as old as they are. You know, the rule, never ask a woman her age. It's kind of a silly rule. Like, how old are you? How dare you? Like, well, actually, how old are you? I'm 70. Why? What, you thought I look old? You know, in olden times, if somebody looked old, that was not a bad thing. Nowadays, things have been flipped on their heads and it's all messed up. But a lot of people just don't want to accept the fact that they're old. I'm 55 years young. I've heard that before. But there are other people who are like, I'm old. The people of the first kind, often I find actually, ironically, aging worse. You know, there are some old people who are 70, kept themselves in good shape. They're going to the gym. They're active. They've got their wits about them. There are some old people who just physically decline a lot. The self-pitying old people will be more likely to be cynical, more likely to be the kid in this world. There's only two kinds of people. The blah 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 blah. You know, the grumpy, cynical old people are usually the more self-pitying ones, and they're generally less happy, generally physically not in as good shape. Because they're like, I'm old anyway. I don't have to keep myself in shape. Give me the donuts. So they complain about how their bodies feel a lot more because their bodies are breaking down more. Whereas the more self-possessed, optimistic old people usually take better care of themselves and have themselves more in order, more optimistic. Often people, as they age, will experience either an upward trend as they get older, wiser, more mature, more even-keeled, still maintain their body as much as they can. You know, you're not going to be lifting, say, as much when you're 70 as you are when you're 25. But, you know, they keep themselves in reasonably good shape. Or the people have more of a downward trend. They become grumpier, more cynical. The worldview that the overly pessimistic worldview that they build keeps them from actually learning from the many experiences that they have. They let themselves go. You know, so there are two different kinds of ways people can go as they get old. They don't all become worse and mean, but they don't all become Gandalf and Dumbledore either. The fourth tip is to remember that old people that are specialized at a certain thing are usually very, very good at that thing because they've been doing it for like 45 years. You know, you pick up a thing or two in that time. But they're less likely to flaunt that than younger characters are. At least, you know, the old people who have gone on an upward trend, learned from their experiences. You know, arrogance is more of a youthful thing. As you grow and you learn that life's going to humble you a lot. There's always going to be people who are better at you in the thing you do than you are. No matter how good you are, there will always be somebody better than you. So growing and getting older has a way of humbling you. So your old character will be very good at a certain thing, probably, unless they just didn't do anything their entire life, which that's probably not gonna make a very interesting old character, but you could do that. But if they actually did something throughout their whole life, they're gonna be really good at it. But they're not gonna make a point of showing the young character, I'm grumpy, but for some reason I really want you to be impressed with me. So look at this really cool thing I can do. Pay lots of attention to it. Probably they're not going to do that. So if you want to show how good your old character is at what they do, it's probably best to just show them just doing it. Probably they won't even talk about it. Old people, when they do something they're good at, in my experience, don't really tend to talk that much. So you can have the young character be like, what are you doing? And they're like, working. Well, hello, what are you doing? Shut up. If they're a grumpy character. Or, what are you doing? Well, you see, the hydrofluxometers in this Quixagulator are doing blah, 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 and, you know, rattles off the lingo that they learned doing it 45 years, and the young character's like, sure. The fifth tip is to ask yourself how comfortable your character is with playing the role of the old person. You know, unfortunately, they do exist. Old people who try to still be young people. It's just one of those facts of life that you just can't change. They're just going to be there forever. And it's sad, but you got to deal with them. And then there are old people who are just like, okay, I'm old. This is where I am in my life. And they don't really care. And then there are old people who really like being old because now everybody has to respect them. And now they know more than all the young people. And people don't expect them to do physical things. And they settle very much into that role. You know, these are more likely the old people who are more willing to be a mentor because he was like, I am the old wise one now. I have attained this point of my life where I've spent 45 years performing, like, I don't know, toothpaste wizardry. So now, like, oh kid, do you want to be a toothpaste wizard? Well, I will show you everything I have learned about the craft of toothpaste wizardry over the last 45 years. I'll show you this over the course of the 2 weeks that you have before the Dark Lord is coming to destroy the universe, and conveniently you'll learn ridiculously fast in that time. Yay! We saved the day. So some old people will even love it so much that now they have all this power, and that they'll lord the fact that they're old over younger people and make them do things for them. Or others might try to just be the friend of the younger people and not use their age to their advantage at all because that reminds them that they're old and they don't want to be old. The sixth and final tip is to just talk to old people. It's good for you in general. They often just have a lot of advice to give, a lot of wisdom. They've lived a lot longer than you have. They're almost always nicer than you think old people are gonna be. There's this weird portrayal in media created for young people of old people that they're all just mean and grumpy and the stupid dumb old people that won't let you go and do drugs with your friends and other fun wholesome young people activities. But that's really, at least that's not the experience I've had with the vast majority of old people I've met in real life. And you know, it's hard for somebody who's lived 15, 16 years, say, to get in the mind of somebody who's lived like 4 times that long without any experience talking to people that age. So as much as you can, find old people to talk to. It'll help you with your writing even when you're not writing old people.